Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 238 of the Sticks and the Six podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co-host, Peter Barricchini. And as always, we are brought to you by the fine folks over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has a new customer offer. When the ice gets coldest, the best players in the world show you exactly who they are. Playoff warriors turn it up round by round, and DraftKings turns it up with them from the first round all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. Bet player props, bet live from the opening faceoff to the final horn. Every moment matters. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 and you'll get $100 in bonus bets instantly.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Limited time offer.
Well, I'll tell you, we've talked about it multiple times here, Peter. I had Colorado to win the Cup. Futures out on them on DraftKings. We won't be going that route. But before we get into the hockey talk, how you doing this week, my friend?
Doing great. Yeah, Colorado getting swept by Vegas really puts a damper on my bracket as well, and any chances I hope of being right after a poor performance in the playoffs for like the first time in a long time, really. Yeah, no, I mean, aside from that, doing good. Managed to, I just want to get your take on the whole entire Canada's team thing in the playoffs when the Maple Leafs aren't there. We've always talked about how, if Toronto was going for a Stanley Cup, would other teams of other fan bases in Canada cheer for Toronto? Most likely not. There's no chance in hell. But I feel like I'm that one exception where it depends on the Canadian team too. Like, I know that there's going to be a lot of heated debate right now, and I'm going to get in a lot of shit for this. But consider me on the Habs bandwagon, man. This is weird saying this because of the whole entire thing where Maple Leaf podcast and everything like that. I know I got family there, and I got my reasons for cheering for Montreal, but just the vibe in itself, watching every single playoff game, that is what a fan base is like, and that's how a team should pander and cater to that fan base every single time. That is true playoff hockey at its finest, and you know for sure as hell we're never going to get that here in Toronto because it's all about the dollar. They penny pinch nonstop, and it's just getting ridiculous to this point right now. But I was watching basically Game 3 with one of my buddies who's a Habs fan, and we were talking. I was absolutely enjoying the experience and seeing his reaction on the other side of everything. And you know what? Habs fans are passionate. They're just as passionate as anybody else, and probably greater that than in Toronto. So seeing that through the other side, it consider me a bandwagoner for the Habs during this playoff run because you know my reasons why. I got some sentimental reasons for that, but overall, the Habs are an absolute vibe. I know they're down 2-1, but I know they got to be a little bit better in generating shots and, not going 20-plus minutes without a shot, especially in overtime. But they're a vibe. They really are right now.
You have to, as a hockey fan, you have to be frustrated with the fact that they just can't seem to get shots. It's like watching the Leafs during the regular season.
They're just like Leaf hockey, yeah.
Yeah, they're just not getting shots. And if you want to go on this whole Canada's team debate, I mean, everyone's going to have their reasons for who they're cheering for. Up to this point, I would say I was not inclined to cheer for the Montreal Canadiens. There was nothing in me that wanted them to get it done. But that said, I have gotten to a point where I think that if they're the team coming out of the East, they're the only ones that have a shot to stop Mitch Marner from getting his first ever Stanley Cup. And so I'm on board. I'm on board with the Habs getting through to the Stanley Cup Final. I'm on board with them getting Canada's first cup since '93.
Mhm.
I'm on board with Montreal, taking the series and Nick Suzuki bringing the cup back to London. I'm on board with that. I partially because I just don't think Carolina can get it done against Vegas, and
Yeah.
I'm more interested in not seeing Marner win a cup and the goalie that we will not speak of than I am. We will talk. I shouldn't say that because we will talk about him shortly here. I do have something I want to say about that.
Yeah.
But I'm more inclined to see the Montreal Canadiens win the cup than Mitch Marner. And that's the legacy that he has left in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So on the basis of Canada's team, I'm not going to sit here and call them Canada's team. I wouldn't call the Oilers if the Canada's team if they were there. I wouldn't call the Flames Canada's team. I wouldn't call the Leafs Canada's team if they were there.
It's more so if the shoe was on the other foot, would you cheer for another team kind of thing for other fan bases? Because I'm pretty sure, like I said, I know what the answer would be if Toronto was in this spot. There's no way in hell Habs fans would cheer for Toronto, Sens fans would cheer for Toronto, Oilers fans would cheer for Toronto.
We said it 100 times. Like we're part of maybe one of the most hated fan bases in all of like the four major sports in North America. So I think, to sit here and like we discussed last week, you have your reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the way that Dobish has carried himself in these playoffs. I think the swagger he's had. I would love to see a guy like him win a cup, come in and just like he was not considered the goalie of their future. It was Jacob Fowler, and now you got Dobish, who is going to create a conversation on that in that regard amongst Habs fans. And then of course like the Nick Suzuki in London kind of relation. The idea, how great would the story be if Nick Suzuki made the Stanley Cup Final and beat the team that drafted him and traded him away in the Stanley Cup Final to win his first Stanley Cup?
And that would be poetic too, because it'd also be the second time that Montreal would knock off Marner.
So there's a lot of storylines here. So again, like I'm not going to sit here and say Canada's team. I'm hoping that Montreal comes out of the East here. I'm hoping that Montreal can put up a good fight. I'm hoping they can find their early successes from early on in the playoffs and make a run here because I do think it'd be good for hockey in Canada. I do think it'd be good for hockey in general to see the cup come back north of the border. So from all those aspects, I mean, I'm interested in seeing that play out. But we do have to talk about Vegas because Vegas did sweep the Colorado Avalanche. The Avs were the favorite to win the cup this year. I think anybody who thought otherwise is crazy. Makar went down with an injury or was playing with an injury most of the playoffs. McKinnon obviously went down with an injury in the last game. So there were some things that have not played out well for the Colorado Avalanche. That said, you don't want to take anything away from what the Vegas Golden Knights have been able to do. You don't want to take anything away from what Mitch Marner has done. And we spoke a little bit to this last week, and I'm gonna reiterate it this week, is that there's never been a question of whether Mitch Marner could do it. There's never been a question of his potential. There's never been a question of how talented he is, the skill that he possesses. There's never been a question about that. Now, again, we talked about it when he had that media availability after he left the Leafs with Mark Masters, and I got Jay's Land over here saying it's what's in his chest and his head, not his hands, and that's kind of what I'm going to get at here, is that we questioned why he would have that media availability with Mark Masters after he left Toronto, and where he kind of doubled down on it's the fans' fault. They kind of pushed me out of the city. They threatened me, blah, 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 blah. And there was a lot of question marks as to why would you host that media availability and further ruin the the legacy, the little bit of legacy that you may have left in Toronto.
It's like a high school drama right now where it's like there's one side of the story, one side of the other, and the other person has forgot about it, but the other person is just keeping going back and back and bringing up that history when everyone else has forgotten about it.
Another comment here on TikTok. Puck over the glass in 2021 against Montreal. Pastrnak blew past him 2 years in a row. There's just been moments in his time in Toronto, and what we need to get past is this storyline of, well, Toronto hung this guy out to dry, and that's not the case at all. Like I think it was Chris Nealon that said that, you know, the Leafs in Toronto hung this kid out to dry.
No,
that was never the case.
The relationship was fractured years before this even happened.
Yes, and in saying that, the recent things he's said in the media, it gives me this like feeling of like Munchausen syndrome, where he's like deliberately making himself the victim so he can have people pick him up,
and that he did nothing wrong.
So, you know, the comment about you know,
not fighting with one another on the bench,
another on the bench, and then, you know, you kind of look at what he did in Game 7 last year, and like how people would turn on each other. We got an older team here in Vegas. We don't turn on each other. It like you're trying to throw more and more shade. They actually
have winners on Vegas, and you're a byproduct where you're not the go-to face anymore.
Right, but you're also still grasping at this idea of like you were the victim in Toronto, and that's the part that frustrates me, is that, and then the next, like after they won, he celebrated, which was great, and, you know, happy for him, like good for him. But then he comes out again in his post-game presser and he's like, yeah, you know, I've had some dark days in hockey. Man, like, you had 9 fucking years of playoffs.
Yeah. You had 9 years to make yourself that kind of guy that could elevate this team to a new level. And in those 9 years, you did nothing to help elevate this team to that new level. You're definitely elevating your new team to a new level. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But for everybody saying right now that, oh, you know, Toronto could use Mitch Marner, where we're, you know, it doesn't exchange the fact that what Mitch Marner did as a Maple Leaf in the playoffs was absolutely nothing. He stood out against Tampa Bay. He stood out against Ottawa. Great. But against the teams where the time and space is taken away, like Florida those 2 times, a ghost. Big moments, ghost. There was that time where he needed to be relied upon when Matthews and Nylander were out. He couldn't deliver. There was that muffin up the middle in Game 5. There's just a whole lot of issues with Marner's play in the playoffs that is still, you know, resonates with fans, that this is why it didn't happen. And of course, he would definitely most likely find success elsewhere. But at the same time, if Mitch Marner was still on this Maple Leafs team and he had to be the one to deliver, there's no guarantee that this year's playoff Mitch Marner would have an impact if the Maple Leafs were in there, if they were in the playoffs.
He handed it in a long time ago, and the frustration that came out in Game 7 last season was frustration in the fact that he knew it wasn't going to get done because he had mailed it in, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to the comment, and again, it came up on TikTok here, is that the comment of, you know, this isn't junior, right? Like, stop your crying, this isn't junior. You know, going back to what Nylander said on the bench. They were trying to motivate, and maybe they went a different route, and maybe that was due to frustration, but they were trying to motivate. And it's become such a problem in this day and age where there's a lot more sensitivity training that needs to go into these professional athletes, right?
That's fair.
Yeah, and I'm trying to say it where you know, I'm staying within the line a little bit here as well, because obviously, you know, you need to cater to the mental health things. We've talked about that on this show, but there's a fine line, right? Spike says a lot of clueless people commenting on the Marner situation. Goes on to say all Marner does is throw shade at Toronto. He's still immature, and that's the part that gets me. Is that
like everyone else on the team, the Maple Leafs have moved on. Mitch himself still hasn't.
the victimization, the self-victimization is what's bugging me. And there is a part of me, and I've thought about this all week, leading up to this show. I've thought about it all week. There's a part of me that wants him to just win this cup and get the dialogue over with.
Yeah.
Get it over with. Year one, wins the cup, get it done with. We won't talk about it again. Forget Marner, forget the days he had in Toronto. Let's just write him off as I wrote those pieces over at the Hockey Writers about the forgotten Maple Leafs. Make him one of the forgotten Maple Leafs. Make people forget that he ever existed in blue and white. Change the chapter, flip the page, get rid of Marner, let him win his cup. That's what he wanted. That's what he chased. It's not about people having, crucified him on the street or when he's walking his dog or whatever the hell he said in that Mark Masters interview. It was a LeBron James move where you wanted to chase a cup, you wanted to win, you wanted to be out of the spotlight, and you took your talents to Vegas, and that was it. I saw a report come out the other day, and this could be way off base. This could be completely rumor based, but that his parents were looking at places in Vegas a year prior to him getting traded. So, maybe that might not be the case. It truly might not. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that was the case. But to have that even as a report out there, and knowing what we know about his communication with guys like Ryan Reeves and all that, and Mark Stone about playing in Vegas, all of it, there's a lot of smoke where there should be a lot more fire, I think. And that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough about Marner. I guess the point of this conversation is that there's a good chance if Vegas wins, he goes on to win Conn Smythe. Okay? Which would just be icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Now, there is another Conn Smythe candidate on Vegas. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't know if you remember, but when it was you, me, and Alex, way back when the London stuff broke and the World Junior stuff broke, I made maybe a poor decision in calling out a specific player on the London Knights at that time, or that had played for the London Knights at that time. I say may have been a poor choice because I was spot on. So again, the outside insider strikes again. But my point being is that one player of those five that were on trial is back in the NHL. Vegas received a ton of criticism this year. Carolina was looking to bring him in, received a lot of criticism from their fans, decided to go another route. Vegas doesn't give a shit. Vegas has never given a shit.
Nope.
So they brought in Carter Hart. I saw one tweet when he got injured. 3 games into his return that noted, isn't it ironic that there's, he's laying on the ground and there's people standing over him watching him, and it kind of triggered the
flashback
story, of the story and everything that's going on, and this inclusivity that we push for in the NHL, and that still is not there because we bring guys like this back into the league. This guy could have had a hockey career. It didn't have to be in the NHL. And now he's got I think it's a 231 goals against, 923 save percentage in 15 games. And that's changed since last night. But now we're talking about him potentially being a Conn Smythe candidate, an MVP and a cup winner. And the conversation is kind of sickening. It's kind of sickening. And it would be on par with the NHL as of late to go out there and hand this guy an MVP. And really, when you look at how close the scoring race is in the playoffs, Marner is having a fantastic playoff run, deserves MVP considerations. But there are games where Vegas would not have won had Carter Hart not been in the net. So the conversation is gonna head in that direction. And we all need to be ready for that conversation, because there's going to be an uproar, and there's going to be fans who battle back and say, the past is the past, and we need to move on, let this kid live his life. But watch the recent documentary that was released by Rick Westhead.
Yep.
I
would also say too, Conn Smythe is voted by the media too, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least the media has a say.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that with the media involved, they still know the story. They still have questions about that. They still wanted to ask questions, but Vegas would not allow anyone to ask Carter Hart any questions about the investigation or the trial or anything like that. I hope that that's still in the back of the media members' minds. And at this point, I would rather have Mitch Marner as playoff MVP than Carter Hart, just because of the whole entire narrative. It's still sickening. Everyone's going to say, yeah, he got off. But at the same time, I saw a comment online too, just because you were acquitted doesn't mean you were not guilty, kind of thing. So let's remember that too, that there was a lot in that, a lot of stuff that this just got, a lot of evidence or a lot of things just got overlooked in the whole entire thing. And I do still feel bad for EM and all this. And the fact that one of the people involved is going on and is basically having this kind of run right now. Yet she's still suffering with everything that happened. I hope that at least those that are voting have at least some sort of a conscience right now. And if he is the winner, it's just going to be a massive backlash based on what happened and what has transpired as a result of that.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at with it, is that it's proof of consent is not supposed to be proven by the person who's claiming that there was no consent. There was, it's got to be. Anyways, I'm not a judge. I'm not a jury. Yeah. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not anything like that.
And let's not forget that it was the judge too that kicked the jury out because of issues involving with the case too, and the judge had the final say regardless. And the judge was siding with the players a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea around it too is that it happened so long ago. There was inconsistencies when it came to another Vegas Golden Knight, Brett Howden, taking a stand.
Mm-hmm.
His texts got thrown out. Carter Hart's conversation of how things happened with Cal Foot didn't line up with what was originally told.
Yeah,
there was just so many inconsistencies. So for this, it would be par for the course. And I hope that if for some reason members of the media vote him the Conn Smythe, that the NHL steps in and just has something to say about it. But my faith
not
in
likely.
That decision making is not high.
It is very wishful thinking.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're gonna get to some Leaf talk. Obviously, the one comment here is Spike saying Freddie Anderson is deserving of Conn Smythe.
Absolutely,
is a Conn Smythe candidate.
Yeah,
he absolutely is. If Montreal makes it, you have to consider
Dobesh.
100%, of course. Heck, Slavkovsky for his early run as well. Alex Newhook is a guy that needs to be considered. There's other candidates. I think the focus is just on, Vegas is there. Somebody from them, they have a strong potential to win, and somebody from them could potentially get the MVP. So anyways, Patrick's jumped on, longtime viewer Patrick. Leafs need to trade Mo, trade Riley and LA's second round pick to San Jose 20 or Vancouver 24th pick in the NHL draft. Do you think it's possibly to get higher value draft picks? I don't think so.
It would be great, but I don't think you're going to get anything for Morgan Riley based on his level of play the last few years.
Yeah.
If you can at least get, a couple mid-round picks, maybe a B-level defender or like depth defender, that seems more likely than anything. If you're pushing for a first rounder, I'd say that's very unrealistic at this point.
Yeah, no, 100%. Good question though. Definitely good question. we got to talk about, of course. Well, for one, let's quickly mention that the Toronto Marlies and Easton Cowan are through to the conference final. Pretty exciting stuff, especially for somebody like Cowan, who, had a rough up and down year with the Leafs and under Berube. That said, they are off to the Eastern Conference Final on a goal that he scored with less than 10
11 seconds, yeah, 11.1 seconds or something.
So it'll be interesting. Yeah. So that's it'll be great for them. Of course, we mentioned PWHL expansion last year. We got to mention PWHL, the Walter Cup champions, Montreal Victoire. How crazy would it be if the Canadians went on to win as well? That'd be insane. But Marie-Philippe Poulin further solidifies her standing as the GOAT, maybe the greatest player to ever lace them up in women's hockey. So deserving of a Walter Cup. Obviously, the first all-Canadian Walter Cup. So Montreal did it there. Also worth noting, Julia Gosling's cousin was also on the Victoire as well. So congratulations.
I believe she's up for Rookie of the Year as well, no?
She is, and she was part of Canada's camp for the Olympics, worth noting as well. So very, 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 very good job by the Montreal Victoire, and they'll go into next season. 4 new teams, but as the defending champs. We got some funny comments coming on TikTok. We're not going to repeat them, but anyways, yeah. So that's fantastic news out of the PWHL as well. Continued growth. We do have to talk about the Matthews saga here because there's been so much conversation, and we questioned Dreger. We questioned a little bit of the reporting by CJ, and it's coming out now that and you can have whatever sources you want to have, but it's coming out now that the belief is there's a good standing between Matthews and the Maple Leafs, John Shaka, Matt Sundin. They all had a nice Skype or FaceTime or whatever you want to call it, conversation. And the belief is he wants to be there. He wants to win there. There are some that will argue right now that the Leafs need to trade Matthews now and move on and start fresh. That's up for debate. We've debated it here already. I think right now, given what you have, you kind of start the year with what you have and see where it goes. But the idea that there was animosity between Matthews and the organization has essentially been kind of, nullified, right? Like there's no
dialed back.
There's no, the animosity is not as maybe prevalent as people first reported. So in a sense, good news for the Maple Leafs that they have a guy who's still interested in being there, wants to be the captain, wants to play, wants to do well, and in saying that, they're still expected to meet with him. I assume they would fly down to Arizona to meet with him, but they're looking to get where he's at, and I'm sure they'll do the same with William Nylander when it comes time for that as well. But the fact is that this guy wants to be there. Now, in saying that, there's people worried that you go into his free agent year without a new contract, without knowing where he's at, and we have a Marner situation all over again. I want to get your thoughts on, one, the mismanagement of the coverage of Auston Matthews, but also where they sit now with a guy that, will have an expiring contract shortly. We're just over 24 months away from an expired contract, and still some question marks really on where he wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why we're still talking about the Matthews misconception, the whole report on that, is just like I think it was like a day or so ago, CJ said on First Up that, there has been the certainties of Matthews has been dialed back, so to speak. And it's interesting because he was the one that reported from league sources saying that there's a growing sense that Matthew is not going to be in camp. So this is like a complete 180 kind of thing in the whole Matthews situation, where the thing that I have with this is it could be just like, again, it could be a tactic from the Matthews camp to try and force management's hands to do meaningful change, and that's always a factor as well. But going into this, before anything was reported, before CJ and all that, we already knew Matthews' thought process in all of this. He already said that he enjoys, or he takes pride in being the captain. He loves playing for Toronto. But he did say that, the future, he doesn't know what it could bring. There could be certain question marks, certain changes, that may not align with him. We already knew where he stood. It was the right answer where, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I want to be here, but who knows what the future holds kind of thing. So we already knew where he stood. We didn't need to go further in depth about his future and commitment long-term possibly, or before the remaining years of his contract actually ends. So the fact that there's still backtracking on top of backtracking right now, where Dreger said that, everyone appears in a good spot, that everything's kind of toned down. There's no more, added fuel to the flame kind of thing. It's great, but it was kind of needless. But then you got to wonder, like I said before, you got to wonder if this is like a ploy for management to make meaningful change. Because then look what happened. Berube got fired. They're in the process of hiring a coach right now. They're still in talks of David Carl to see where he sides in all of this, what he wants to do, if he wants to stay in Denver, take the next step up, who knows? But that is at least a good starting point right now. In regards to the future aspect, I said this before, you just got to play it year by year. If the Maple Leafs get back to at least a playoff spot and they at least show a little bit of a competitive edge, competitive drive with a new voice, new look roster, with their first round pick that they're going to get, whether it's McKenna, possibly Stenberg, we'll get to that in a bit. We'll see how much of a step Cowan can take because of this playoff run with the Marlies and how it's going to bode well for his development. We're going to see if John Tavares could once again replicate a 70-plus point year because he's aging like fine wine. Is Matthew Nye going to hit 80 points and still be healthy and be that power forward player that they need? The one question mark they need to do is still address the defense. I think that's going to be the main question mark right there. They got to address their goaltending as well because Joseph Woll has not looked good in the World Hockey Championship. He's gotten pulled and Devin Cooley's taken over. Stolarz, you have questions about his injury. Do you move one of those in hopes that Hildeby could come up, still be a backup, and then you rely on Artur Akhtyamov, who recently on the 32 podcast, Elliot Friedman has said that there's a growing sense that this is a guy that can be an NHL player. So that is a decent step forward for goaltending where, you've talked about wanting the homegrown talent in goal where you haven't had that. Now you got two bona fide potential players in the NHL right now. Now, I would be hesitant to move Akhtyamov based on the way that he's played right now. I think you got to move on from Stolarz or Woll. But overall, I think with Matthews, you got to take that one step further. You want to show progression and you want to show that this year is a fluke. If he's committed, and not only that too, I get that they still need to meet with him. And I know there's talks about, you want to meet face to face, but there's a Zoom call and there's controversy over a Zoom call. But you got to think that Matt Sundin is in Sweden. Chayka's here. Matthews is still, rehabbing his injury. He probably doesn't want to go anywhere. Maybe Chayka could fly down and you can still do a Zoom call with Matt from Switzerland. You can still do that. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's overblowing the fact that they're not meeting him face to face. I think they just need to have that conversation. They have that conversation. He knows the plan. Everyone's on the same page with that. They want him to elevate his play as well. That'll be a good start. But this season is basically the make or break season coming up.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like the fact that Matthews' representation is reaching out and trying to squash this story is that's important in itself, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've mentioned it 100 times. The representation that him and McDavid have are the exact same. They both are free agents in 2 seasons. There's going to be a lot of a lot of question marks surrounding those two players. I mean, they're two vital players to two Canadian teams in two extremely important markets. I think we'd all be crazy not to question what the interest is, engage the interest of staying where they are. That said, it's also worth noting, like, this is a guy who's never, outside of maybe comments that were taken out of context where he said, I can't tell you what the future holds.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has continuously solidified his interest in being a Toronto Maple Leaf. And maybe it's all talk. I mean, we're not in the room. But at the end of the day, you got to take it for what it is. But
also, he hasn't officially closed the door on anything.
100%.
That's the main thing.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's so important for people to understand, is that, like, Toronto media, as important as it is to the game, as important as it is to the connection between the team and the fan base, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, because they and we report on every little whisper, and every little whisper gets turned into a big time show in the Toronto market. And Toronto's not alone. Montreal's there, New York's there. Like, there are markets that Edmonton's there. If you have a star player of that magnitude, it's going to get blown out of proportion, and that's just the way it is. So I think for it to kind of be dialed back a little bit, for his representation to come out and talk about it, it's so important. I'm glad you did mention Sundin in that conversation as well, because he is over in Sweden. He was also at the game watching Stenberg recently at the World Championships, and following an incredible play by Ivar Stenberg.
Nice goal.
Who's had multiple nice goals over in the World Championship. They panned to Matt Sundin sitting in the stands, whether it was on his phone or whatever, he was taking some notes. And immediately, everyone took that and ran with it. Everyone took it.
Everyone's taking the bait right now.
Us included.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you have to ask that question. I mentioned it like the last 2 weeks. The odds makers on betting sites for Gavin McKenna to go first overall do not have him as a unanimous decision. And that's maybe the most telling thing, because these odds makers, I don't know how they do it, but they always have everything kind of lined up perfectly. They don't have him as the unanimous number one. So with that said, with the World Championship, the way it's going, with the upsets as well. Like, you talk about Norway. What are they, 5-1, 0-1?
It's a good thing you brought up Norway, because I'm working on something on Tinas Koblar. Dude is an absolute animal right now for Norway.
I think everyone's underestimated that kid.
Yeah.
When he got picked, everyone was kind of like, who the fuck is this guy?
A lot of questions, I will say that. But when I went back and saw the play, it made sense. And he's just risen and elevated to a new level. And not just senior competition, NHL level competition. I mean, he scored a deflected goal against Canada, but it's against Canada.
Yeah.
He had an assist against them. He had another goal against Czechia too, and they got some solid players.
Yeah, I mean, for one,
Koblar, let's go.
Yeah, longtime viewer here, Patrick, is all for
Hats
Koblar.
on the Koblar train.
But I'm curious on your thoughts, like size and skill level. You have to wonder, like, is he? Would you make him a comparison to like a Slavkovsky type of player, where he's got that high level skill, maybe doesn't translate right away, but a guy who can certainly come around and I mean, when he was drafted, I'm not lying when I say there was a lot of question marks as to what this guy can do for us.
I mean, you can see some of the similarities between him and Slavkovsky, but I feel like at this age right now, compared to Slavkovsky, I will say that Koblar has the advantage in utilizing his size and his strength to his advantage. I feel like he knows how to power his way through the middle. He knows how to battle in the corners. He knows how to get to that, or get to those dirty areas, front of the net, high danger shot range very, very well. And he protects pucks down low, wins battles. I feel like he does that a little bit better than Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky, I feel like, already has the shot.
Yeah.
At that age, he had the hands. Koblar right now, again, believe he's only 18. So he's developing his development path is going quicker than expected right now. And I feel like maybe this tournament could decide if he jumps ship over to North America. Because if Sundin is also keeping tabs on him as well, or all the other scouts are keeping tabs on him, they got to be impressed because he's leading the team in scoring with 5 goals and 8 points, or tied for the league team lead in goals. I believe he's 11th overall in points. And again, the way that he's progressed, and especially he played well against a team like Canada, where it's all NHLers.
And this is no shot at
that's important.
Yeah. Sorry, there's no shot at Norway either, but it's Norway as well, right? Like, keep that in mind with the history of the country's international team. To have a player like that lead the team the way that he is, obviously he's going to raise some eyebrows, right? So, and
again, Michael Brandstad, Nygaard looking good as well. Stein Solberg looking very good as well. So the path for like Norwegian players is looking great right now, where a lot of their younger players are doing or having a significant impact for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in that same breath, we've got Ivar Stenberg. Okay. I'm being reminded over here on TikTok that Ivar Stenberg is under 6 feet, but what he brings is a high level of skill already. He plays in the men's league. He plays against tough competition, mature competition, and he's been able to translate and transition that game to that top level over in the SHL as well. Now, we kind of touched on this a couple weeks ago, but one of the comments made about Stenberg is that he possesses high level skill that you can teach, whereas Gavin McKenna's got the raw talent that you can't teach.
He's already got that elite level skill.
And so it raises the question again. And anybody who saw that little snippet from Leafs Blueprint of like the draft room and them watching some film, people are already talking about they've got Gavin McKenna listed as number 1, and right behind him could be
Stenberg and Reed.
Stenberg and Reed.
Yeah.
And that the Leafs have considerations on all fronts. And it's interesting to me because I think, at number 1, you'd think it's got to be an easy pick. That said, it's not as simple as people may think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one comment over here saying draft Canadian, not Swedish.
Nationality, I don't buy that.
I'm not even going to go down that road.
Not be a factor.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go down that road. Patrick says Stenberg is better defensively. Spike says Stenberg Celebrini will be dangerous in San Jose.
Oh, God.
Don't
bring that up, man.
Yeah, all not bad comments. The fortunate thing is we don't need to play San Jose more than twice a year until playoff time. Anyways, in a realistic way, could Ivar Stenberg push his way to the top at the World Championships?
I mean, definitely possible. I mean, it definitely is helping his draft stock right now. No denying that. I believe Cam Robinson brought out a tweet about draft eligible players that have had the most points during the World Hockey Championship, and it's the list of Laine, Matthews, and Stenberg is on that list with 8 points already. And it should not discredit anything of what Stenberg has done to this point, because he continues to solidify himself and play well against senior level competition. He was dominant during the in the SHL, dominant right now against, again, kind of like Koblar, playing well and matching up on the top line against other teams' top players, some NHL level quality right there. Is this a big decision making for the Maple Leafs? Absolutely. Because right now, where, like you said, it's not a consensus one. It just feels like McKenna is the safer pick. And obviously Stenberg improving his stock right now. And now we're going to have a lot of fans or a lot of, people saying that, oh, well, why didn't McKenna take the chance to go there, up his draft stock? Fair point. But he had already said he wanted to focus on his offseason training. He wanted to focus on the combine. He wanted to focus on the season ahead. That's number 1. Number 2, as we previously alluded before, Stenberg has already played against grown men. McKenna really hasn't. And if McKenna goes into this tournament, has a bad showing, then that conversation of Stenberg going first overall becomes even more magnified and more of a talking point than anything, because it's like, well, McKenna, he did this in college. How come he couldn't translate here? Because college and NHL, two different levels. Stenberg is at least playing against grown men. McKenna playing against older competition, but still within his age group, and he still dominated that. Great. But I just had this feeling that if McKenna goes and he has a bad tournament, everyone's immediately going to jump to Stenberg first overall. Now, what are the odds that the Maple Leafs are going to go for McKenna or Stenberg? I think it's around that 55-60 range for McKenna, 40-45 for Stenberg. I do feel like Chase Reed does have a chance in there, but if we're going best player available, these are the two guys that are best player available. I feel like Chase Reed will make an impact on the line 2-3 years from now, sooner than expected. I think that's a good situation. But with McKenna and Stenberg, both players can easily jump in right now. Now, it's more the progression aspect that's going to come through with all this of who's going to be in the right. You can't fault the Maple Leafs for taking the elite skill level that McKenna already possesses. And yes, there have been defensive deficiencies. Off-puck play has kind of improved throughout the year. He has progressed and he has, adapted to the collegiate level. He held his own in the second half, and that was fantastic. That's what you want to see. You want to see that progression. Stenberg, on the other hand, it may take a few years for McKenna to reach the point production that's expected of him. Stenberg could come in right now and be possibly a 30, 40 point player, mid six, top six, but already have that defensive minded game to him. He's already got that same mindset. He's aggressive. He's got that work ethic, that drive, and that aspect that wins during the playoffs. But again, if you're banking on McKenna being that Patrick Kane / Nikita Kucherov-esque type of playmaker that could open things up really well, make people hurt for giving you that time and space, how can you really pass up on that? And I know that this is a very difficult question to have right now, but to me, the safe pick is McKenna. Not to necessarily say that Stenberg is a risky pick, but Stenberg will be maybe that 60, 70 point player that's two-way and, relied upon in any situation. Then McKenna, that's only going to be 5-on-5 power play, but 80, 90 points possibly. I'm over projecting a little bit with the points there, but if he could get to that Patrick Kane, Kucherov level, great. Stenberg, he could be a really reliable two-way player. Barkov-esque,
big
kind of, yeah.
Barkov, yeah. That's kind of what sticks with me is I keep going back to Alexander Barkov and how monumental he's been for Florida. Too. Yeah, exactly. Patrick over here is like he's just driving home this idea of Leafs need picks. He says that Ethan Belchetz could be a riser in the draft or should be a riser in the draft.
Consensus is around like 8 to 12 for Belchetz. I think that's been the main area for him all season. That's basically where I've had him all season long too. In that 8 to 12, maybe 13 ranges, or not 13 ranges, just one spot down. But he is an absolute unicorn in terms of the skill, the ability to bully his way to the middle, and the offensive power that he has, especially with his shot. I think that a team is going to be very happy with him, but I don't think he'll maybe rise into the top 5. I don't see that, considering that what Viggo Bjork has done, what Carson Carroll's did, what Keaton Verhoff can still do, what Caleb Malhotra has done all year. I feel like those guys have been a lot more consistent. And again, Belchetz was kind of injured throughout the playoffs and towards the tail end of the season through no fault of his own. But I think he is going to be a very reliable pick within that 8 to 12 range.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anyways, sorry. Ethan Belchetz. So sorry, jumping back to Stenberg for a second here. I lost my train of thought. I think the fact that McKenna sat out, I don't think changes where people have him. In terms of what Stenberg's been able to do, Stenberg's done everything he can this season to push for that number one spot. So really, it's going to come down to what you believe their ceiling is, and I still think that there's a belief that McKenna's ceiling is a lot higher than where he's at, given the route that he's taken. But I do think that there's a lot of people that are looking at Stenberg and saying, like, this kid's ceiling is higher than people initially thought.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the conversation in the draft room for the Leafs leading up to the draft is what route do we go, and do we want like the Barkov-esque, Selke, perennial Selke, and that also allows Matthews to play his game because you've got that two-way forward that can be in your lineup. Or do you go the route of, pure talent, Gavin McKenna, his ceiling's higher than people think, and he's going to be a 120-point guy at some point in his career.
And that's where you brought up too, like allowing Matthews to play his game. I think both players in their own right will allow Matthews to do that. Because with McKenna, McKenna's deceptive as all hell, and he can bait players in, and that allows Matthews to open up, go in for those shooting lanes. Same with Stenberg, but he could kind of be that, player that could go into the dirty areas, kind of like a Matthew Nyes kind of thing, and that allows him to remain open and take a step back, get open a little bit more as he pushes in the middle to, get ready for a pass and everything. So I think both do it in their own right, but will make Matthews more successful in that regard.
I think the last note I want to make about it too is that, we always talk about, Canadian international teams and how, we've always got 8 to 9 captains on the NHL captains on the teams. And these guys are all high-end talented players that, have to learn to play roles. These Scandinavian countries, like they learn that the role is the role, regardless of where you're playing. So if you're a Stenberg, let's say you're a 90-point guy and you're coming in, and all of a sudden on the international stage, you're playing it, a third line checking role. You learn to play that, and you play
accept it,
and you play it without the arrogance that kind of comes with it sometimes. So I think that's important as well to consider. I'm not saying that that's a decision maker. I'm not saying that changes anything. I'm saying it's an important question to ask when you're looking at the McKenna versus Stenberg debate.
Yeah.
In saying that, Spike McKenna has better speed, better vision. Matthews needs that on his wing. I don't disagree. Yeah. I don't disagree. I truly think that's the route they go. I think it needs to be debated though, because I do truly believe that Stenberg's done everything he can to create that conversation to top the draft this year. Last note before we kind of steer away from this, I should note as well, kind of in the middle of our Maple Leafs talk here, today it was noted that former Leaf Forbes Kennedy had passed away. So our condolences to the Kennedy family, his teammates, his friends, his family. Never something we want to talk about on this podcast, but it's a part of life, and unfortunately, it's a conversation at times. So we, of course, at the Sticks and Six podcast, send our condolences. Our final topic is kind of diving into that second round pick that the Leafs currently hold. Obviously, after 1, 2, there's a drop off. After 3, 4, 5, 6, there's another drop off, and so on and so forth. After the first round pick, the Leafs don't have a pick for quite some time. There is a lot of interest in the second round pick because there are a lot of second round picks that turn into relatively solid NHL players. So knowing that we both do rankings every year, knowing that I will be at the Combine once again this year.
Yes.
I want to get your feel on what you think the Leafs should do with their second round pick.
That is if they don't use it to trade up, I feel like, or get another asset in return that could help them. I feel like if they keep this pick, because I believe based on the conditions with the LA one, it's the lesser of the two picks, and I think it was Buffalo's, and it's going to be in the 60 range. So initially it was going to be a little bit higher, like 5 spots, but 5, 6 spots, whatever. I'm not going to complain about that. It's going to be a late second. But there are still a lot of possibilities with that second round pick that the Maple Leafs could take. And I'm going to give my 5, but I want to hear your 5, Forbes, on who you think they should take as well as possibilities. But I already wrote up on this, and I'm really dead set on these 5 players that these are who I would target if and only if I were in the Maple Leafs scouting room, meetings, what have you. First is Axel Elofsson, right shot defender from Arabo HK. Looked really good during the U18 World Championship, but also the Maple Leafs need a solid puck moving defender. He is all that. Again, defensive game is a little bit of a question mark, but when you have the offense and the puck moving skills, you pair him up with someone that's reliable. So you can pair him up with the Danford, pair him up with the Chadwick, possibly, and you have Elofsson to be the one that leads the charge from the back end. 2 is Jonas Lagerberg-Holland. I have been a big fan of his, despite very little game time because he's had a knee injury, but he put up basically Cy Young numbers last year, 4 goals, 27 goals, and I think he only had about 3 assists last season. And he had the same amount of goals as Viggo Bjork and 1 more than Ivar Stenberg last season, and both of them are in possible top 5 talks. Shot generator, goal scorer, great size and energy. I love the pace of play that he brings. Third is Alessandro Diorio. More of a two-way center, but very great puck skills, great hands, great offensive vision as well. Plays with great amount of pace. It literally reminds me of the way that Anthony Cirelli plays, where maybe he won't be a impact producer, but he can impact the game in many, many different ways. And I love the fact that he can be used in all situations. Responsible without the puck. He's quick. He's got that speed. I feel like he could be a good asset as a possible third-line center. Jakub Vanacek, again, impressed during the U18s. Massive shot generator, smooth skater on the rush. I believe if I recall, he did lead that tournament in goals by a defender. He may not have the most points, but he had 3 goals for Czechia. So that to me is something to look out for because he could get pucks on net. Again, Maple Leafs need to do that. And Thomas Vandenberg, I don't know if he's going to be there. That's probably going to be wishful thinking. But again, kind of like Diorio, two-way center, got that energy, got the work ethic, solid upside. I think that he's going to be a really great pick if he's available at 60 right there. 2 other names to look out for, Alexander Bilecki on Kitchener Rangers, solid playoffs and Memorial Cup run, and Brett Liskey as well from the Everett Silvertips.
Oh, I love it. I love the breakdown. I love the breakdown.
I tried to be as quick as possible.
That's fair. That's fair. So I kind of went on a full like defensive run here.
Perfect.
And I've only got 3 real focus points for you. I'm right on board with you for Axel Elofsson. My pronunciation's never great. But he's for essentially the same reasons. Right-handed defenseman. Leafs are in need of that. I think what he can bring to the blue line is such a strong presence. And I think the way that he could develop, especially under an Oliver Ekman-Larsson, would be such a beautiful thing for his game. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's important. Luke Scherer is another.
Forget OEL was all offense too when he started off, so maybe he could learn a little bit of the defensive game.
Exactly, and OEL has turned into maybe the Leafs' top defenseman right now. Yeah. So I think that's important. He's developed his game. We kind of saw that development when he went through Vancouver and didn't have some great runs. I think he was trying to make that transition, and that's why he had a couple of rough seasons. Luke Scherer out of the U.S. development program.
Ooh, good one.
He's another guy I look at, 6'3", 200 pounds, right-handed defenseman again. A guy that certainly can add that physicality and that presence. He's not a super offensive defenseman. With the U.S. U18 team this year, this past season, he had 22 points in 62 games, one of which is a goal. So not a guy that's going to shoot the puck on the net a lot, but a guy that can definitely bring that physical edge to the Leafs blue line and give them that right-handed defenseman. And then the last guy I had, sorry, I'm just pulling up the name here, was Georgios Pantelis. I big on him as well, 2'10", just over 6 feet tall, but a guy that has that physicality in his game, has it in his repertoire, but can also add a little bit of offense. 37 points in 68 games with the Brandon Wheat Kings in a rough WHL as well. And we all know that the West is a place that adds that physical edge to your game as well. So definitely something that the Leafs, I think, will focus on. I wrote it last year at the Combine as well that the Leafs needed a big right-handed defenseman.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going to be a topic of conversation for me again when we talk to some of the prospects. When I talk to some of the prospects this season, I will certainly be going after some of the right-handed defensemen and seeing if they meet with the Leafs. Of course, it'll be those guys in that kind of range that we have in our rankings as well. So 3 names from my side, 5-6 names from your side. Lots of potential in that second round that the Leafs can kind of play with. Or, I mean, we've discussed it before. They could use that pick and find ways to get more draft capital and possibly more diamonds in the rough, which is certainly something the Leafs could do as well.
Just about to say, you could use that pick and you could find another Tina Kopitar.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Exactly. So, anyways, that's kind of all we have for Leaf Talk this week. Of course, we'll all be staying tuned on the Eastern Conference Final to see if Montreal can pull themselves out of this hole. The Leafs nightmare playoff continues with the Vegas Golden Knights going through to the Stanley Cup Final. I think that's it. I just a little fun talk here at the end here, but I'm a big card collector.
Yeah.
I've gone back into the hobby recently, last 3 or 4 years. Anyways, I'm on this site where you can buy slabs, okay, mystery slabs, and I bought a $10 pack. I end up pulling a SGC 7, so not near mint, but SGC 7. LeBron James rookie card.
Ooh.
So this site offers you like an 80% buyback anyway. So they offered me $6.75. I was looking at it, I'm like, yeah, it's LeBron James. Like, it's got to be worth something. Anyways, I looked up comparables. I'm sitting on a $2,000 card.
Oh, buddy, there you go.
So I had it shipped to me. It's sitting down in the old vault.
I was about to say, you got to get that graded.
Yeah, it's graded a 7. It's
already graded right now.
Okay, so it's off centered, which is why it got the 7. I'm sure I could break it and get an 8, but for the record, an 8 goes for about $2,300. So
sitting on some money right there, man.
Yeah, and then just another note, in my card collections, I went out and purchased myself. We got it for very cheap. I got a Julia Gosling Outburst Young Gun, so her rookie card out of the PWHL set, Outburst, which is one of the variants. But yeah, back into the collecting, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a dopamine fix for somebody with ADHD like myself. And
about to say, I got to get in on some of that too.
Yeah, it's a good time. Anyways. That's it for episode 238. You have anything else you want to add before we close it out?
Nope. Just be on the lookout. I got something on Kopitar I'm already working on right now. Should be out tomorrow over at the Hockey Writers. And we recently completed our writers mock draft. So if you're looking for some draft fun, I know we got so many fans here, but if you're a fan of another team, tune in, check it out. Looking to get that out sometime next week. But yeah, very fun and a lot of interesting picks. A lot of interesting picks and a little bit of chaos there. So I was kind of happy with that. I love it when things get a little excited for mock drafts right there. I
was gonna say chaos is good. Chaos is not a bad thing.
I love different opinions and takes. You gotta respect that.
Absolutely. I will say, if you haven't already, check out the Hockey Writers for some great draft coverage by Peter and the team. Well over 100 draft prospect profiles as we do year in and year out.
Closing in often on 120.
Closing on 120. They're often used on draft coverage on draft day as well. Some of the quotes that we give. So definitely check that out. Check out all the coverage over at the Hockey Writers. And of course, make sure you check out the Hockey Podcast Network for all the great shows continually growing over at the Podcast Network. As always, we run right through the summer until August. If you haven't already, sign up for DraftKings, use code THPN. And in the show description here on YouTube, make sure you check out SeatGeek as well as BioSteel for $20 off and 20% off respectively. outside of that, man, it's been another big week, another good week for the Leafs on the outside of the playoffs. Another bad week for the Leafs inside the playoffs as Mitch Marner makes his Cup Final debut this coming week. Outside of that, that's it for 238. On to 239 next week. We close it with that and our good friend Alex Hobson and his hit 25. Until next time, guys.